Welcome to Teaching Truth. When I was a small boy, I lived and went to primary school in the Lanarkshire town of Motherwell, home to the then famous Ravenscraig Steelworks. The steelworks that once stood at Ravenscraig operated round the clock, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year for decades without pause. The iconic blue cooling towers were a bastion of central Scotland's landscape, and the steelworks pulled in generation after generation of school leavers and kept them for life. Visit Ravenscraig today and it consists of green fields, a country park and new housing. You'd hardly know there had been any industrial activity there at all. What was there for many years now gone. And what was in Thyatira for many years was, by the 2nd century, gone. Not a steelworks, though Thyatira was home to many trades, but a church whose beacon on the landscape, as it were, just like the cooling towers at Ravenscraig, a church whose beacon on the landscape dimmed, died out, and was no more. In our reflections this week, we're opening the envelope containing the letter that was written to the church in Thyatira. And in his letter, Jesus, in effect, eyeballs the church at Thyatira and warns them of the impending reality. Let's read the letter together from Revelation chapter 2. To the church in Thyatira. To the angel of the church in Thyatira write, These are the words of the Son of God, whose eyes are like blazing fire and whose feet are like burnished bronze. I know your deeds, your love and faith, your service and perseverance, and that you're now doing more than you did at first. Nevertheless, I have this against you. You tolerate that woman Jezebel, who calls herself a prophetess. By her teaching, she misleads my servants into sexual immorality and the eating of food sacrificed to idols. I have given her time to repent of her immorality, but she is unwilling. So I will cast her on a bed of suffering, and I will make those who commit adultery with her suffer intensely unless they repent of her ways. I will strike her children dead. Then all the churches will know that I am he who searches hearts and minds, and I will repay each of you according to your deeds. Now I say to the rest of you in Thyatira, to you who do not hold to her teaching, and have not learned Satan's so-called deep secrets, I will not impose any other burden upon you. Only hold on to what you have until I come. To him who overcomes and does my will to the end, I will give authority over the nations. He will rule them with an iron scepter. He will dash them to pieces like pottery. Just as I have received authority from my Father. I will also give him the morning star. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit is saying to the churches. Let me share with you the context of the church in Thyatira. Although Thyatira was not famous as a political hub or a centre of architecture or indeed the arts, it was nonetheless the headquarters for many ancient trade guilds, potters, tanners, weavers, coppersmiths, robe makers and dyers' guilds. Therefore, Thyatira was a place of many industries. It was also the home of a famous purple cloth company, and one of their salespeople, a woman by the name of Lydia, travelled, as we know, to Philippi and became Paul's first convert in Europe. Thyatira is now the modern-day Turkish city of Akhisar, south of Istanbul. The name Thyatira means sacrifice or sacrificial offering. And that's significant because the church at Thyatira were willing, or at least some of them were willing, to sacrifice their faith on the altar of compromise. What began as a small compromise then quickly resulted in truth being exchanged for error and being abandoned for that which was convenient. And it was because of that compromise, come the second century, there was no church to be found in Thyatira. And it's against the backdrop of this now historical reality, but with a prophetic seriousness to the letter, that's seen in the way that Jesus introduces himself. The words of the Son of God, whose eyes are like blazing fire and whose feet are like burnished bronze. And here Jesus is referencing the prophetic literature of Daniel chapter 10 and Daniel chapter 3, verse 25. See, this introduction to the letter was not the one that the church in Thyatira was hoping for. Jesus says he is the Son of God, giving his authoritative place within the Trinity. His description reflects his divinity. He refers to his eyes, which are like blazing fire, seeing all things we think are unseen. See, when Jesus says there is fire in his eyes, he isn't talking here about some kind of romantic stare. No, this is about seeing right into what the situation was. Jesus' penetrating gaze is to heal, not to condemn. His feet are like burnished bronze, an image that those in the church would have understood as one of the trades in the city was of bronze making. Bronze is always biblically symbolic of judgments. And so Jesus, in writing this letter to the church in Thyatira, was introducing it in a way that would captivate and capture their attention. And whatever he was going to say, it was not going to be good. Put simply, Jesus was on the case of the church in Thyatira.